All right, everybody, welcome back to yet another session. I'm your host and as well as the presenter for today. My name is Mithun Vakharia. I've been working in health IT for last 22 years, and healthcare data is one of my favorite subjects and the area of expertise. And today we are going to present to you on this webinar an enterprise data extraction strategy, a Santeware Healthcare perspective. Now, at Santeware Healthcare, we recognize that modern healthcare applications work on interoperability, which is absolutely fine when it comes to sharing the data across the system when you have two different disparate systems. But when we are talking about extracting data for various use cases, be it AI, analytics, enterprise data extraction is very, very difficult to be done using the APIs or the FHIRs or the HL7 messaging standards. So that's basically the topic that we are going to cover today. And we are going to talk from both the business and the technical point of view for very popular EMRs and ERP systems out there on how do you manage data extraction at scale, especially when you have to get hold of enterprise data, which might be residing in your applications for last 10 years, 20 years. So having said that, let's not waste further time and move on to the agenda for today. So the agenda is going to be pretty straightforward. And I know this is a topic that a lot of people you have requested. And I'm going to keep it very short and simple so that everybody understands. And it's something that you can also relate to the work that you do at your organization. So why extraction is difficult? So that's kind of the root cause that we're going to address today. What is extraction? Why extraction is difficult? And when it gets really difficult? Then you basically drill down to the next topic, which is, should we extract the data using APIs, FHIRs, HL7s, or should we always approach with direct database? So which is better? So both the options are good, but it has its own pros and cons, and I'm going to deep dive into those pros and cons. And then we are going to compare them with respect to performance, completeness, scalability, and also maybe costing or return of investment on the amount of budget that you're going to put in these activities. And then how do you decide? So we have created a decision framework which will help you to decide which approach to pick, maybe one of either or maybe both, depending on the work that you're doing at your organization. And then, of course, the conclusion, and then we'll be open for any questions and answers. Okay, sorry. So why enterprise legacy extraction is a challenge? So as I said, like at Santeware, we recognize that modern healthcare uses interoperability, which is in terms of messaging standards that are out there. And that's an increasing dependence that's being used heavily by most of the organization. But interoperability is not same as enterprise data extraction. When organization needs to access, let's say, decades of legacy clinical, financial, and administrative data, you can't really rely on APIs or HL7s or FHIRs because they are limited in certain ways. And it doesn't do the complete job of extracting all the components or all the data elements that the organization might be requiring for various use cases, be it archival, be it creating a data repository, be it for analytics or for pushing it into data warehouse or lakehouse, or for building an AI programs using that data. So what are those typical challenges that you face when you are extracting enterprise data from these legacy applications or applications that are being used in the organization for last 10, 20 years? So first one is the volume or the number of years that this data has been residing in your system. So we have seen typically large enterprise application being used in an organization on an average for about 8 to 10 years. So that's a huge period of time that you have to consider when you're extracting enterprise data from this system. So it could be anywhere from a decade to about 15, 20 years worth of data. And the data size could have grown exponentially, maybe in terabytes or petabytes over a period of time. Um, The other complexity is the proprietary schemas. Now, most of these big EMRs and EHRs and ERPs, they all have multiple applications that are built into one single architecture. Sometimes, so like say, for example, in Cerner's case, Cerner has built the core, but a lot of the ancillary applications or the modules has been acquired over a period of year and has been integrated as part of Cerner Millennium platform. So the schema is really, really complex, and it sometimes contains as many as 8,000 to 9,000 tables to scan and get the right information. Same thing, same story with Epic. With Oracle EBS, which has close to 55,000 tables. Salesforce is another huge mammoth of an application. So it's really complex to understand the schema, to understand the relationship and how the data is being tied together. So somebody who knows these proprietary schemas is very rare to find. And then, of course, it is also a time-consuming process for any organization or team to master any of these schemas. And that's what basically we at Santeware master at, is that we have spent last 22 years in understanding all these proprietary systems and their schemas so that we can help our customers and clients with data extraction, data migration, data archival related projects, or even building analytics and reporting platform using the data from these systems. And then we'll talk more about that. But then what are the other challenges? Multiple modules. So data could reside not just in your core application, but it could reside in your departmental application, in your revenue cycle side. So there's a huge domain expertise that is required. Data. So mastering these clinical, revenue cycle, ERP, HR, supply chain, administrative module, this is a must. I mean, without domain understanding, or I would not say 100% of your domain understanding, but at least understanding the relationship across these data and the tables is very, very important. And it could only be achieved through your domain knowledge. And if somebody has spent good 4 or 5 years in that domain to even work on this complex data set. Referential integrity, master data terminology, without saying, I mean, it's the bread and butter when it comes to the database extraction or when you're working on a database. Those are something that you have to be very, very mindful of. You need to take care of the crosswalks, the mapping, the terminology standards, normalizing that data, which is not an easy process. And every system comes with its own challenge. And it all depends on the final use case that the organization has undertaken. So some of these normalization and terminology crosswalk standardization takes a lot of effort. Now with the evolution of AI, some of these activities could be done through an automated process, but still there is about 20 to 30% manual intervention that is required in order to verify these normalization and standard crosswalk mapping of these terminologies that is used widely in the healthcare scenario. And then, of course, downtime, performance, audit requirement, those are all a consideration when you're actually taking such a huge task. So that's more on the governance side and on the infrastructure management side, and we'll talk more about that. So all this put together makes the data enterprise level data extraction really, really complex. Now, that doesn't mean that people do not extract the data. People do extraction of data all the time. Typically, they do it through the proprietary reporting tools that is provided by these applications like Cerner Millennium, Epic, Oracle, Salesforce. But it has its own limitation when it comes to what you could extract and at what granularity can you extract and at what and the volume that you're looking for to extract. So what are the other ways other than the proprietary reporting tool that has been provided by these applications? Well, there are basically two other ways that a lot of organizations rely on when they are extracting the data. One is the extraction through the APIs, the FHIR messaging standards, the HL7, V2, or the other one is the traditional direct database extraction. So which one is good, and what are the pros and cons of doing these extractions? Well, I would say FHIR and API has solved interoperability problems to some extent within the healthcare scenario, but it still has not covered all the data elements that an organization would require in order to make an informed decision. It did not solve enterprise scale data extraction. It's solved more on a real time things that is happening at the time of point of care. So that's why APIs are excellent for exchange of information between two systems or with a third party or with the agencies for the limited data set that is out there. But designing APIs and FHIR for moving large amount of data is not ideal, and it comes with its own challenges. And it's also very inexpensive and costly affair in order to do that through that route. So so, and also API doesn't expose everything. It exposes only the governed business objects that the application vendor releases over a period of time. And most of the organization, if they take that approach, basically rely or are the mercy of these vendors on when they actually make those business objects available through an API or a FHIR or a HL7. And it's a long, time consuming and expensive process, as I said. So not the full underlying database is available. So it has its limited scope. Whereas the database extraction provides a complete historical data set suitable for migration archival, as I said before. And APIs also has constraints. So like pagination, throttling, supported resource by each vendor, the infrastructure that is required in order to manage the VPN tunnel setup, the HTTPS request, opening up the ports, managing all that. So there are multiple teams that are involved. So obviously the cost also goes up in such implementations. Um, the question isn't whether it's API versus database. The question is what are the organizations trying to do? They can pick either the API word or the database, or they could pick both if the situation or the scenario demands for both. So having said that, I'll just quickly read through. So data breadth. So these are some of the features that, or these are some of the points that you have to consider when you're actually deciding which way to go with in order to get that data out. So one is the data breadth. The other one is the complexity of the financial data, performance, format, setup, and compliances. So the first one, data breadth. So obviously with direct database extraction, either there is clarity, but of course, these are proprietary reporting tools comes with its own challenge. So you can always look for extracting data directly through your custom SQLs or through Oracle scripts. So with the data breadth on the direct database extraction, you get complete data. The underlying database is available to you. Access all clinical, financial, administrative tables. Whereas with FHIR, it's limited because, as I said before, like it can only support what the business objects has been released by these providers or the vendors in terms of FHIR, HL7s. So in healthcare perspective, US CDI clinical data is kind of um, mandated in United States, where most of these vendors are forced to share certain APIs or FHIR resources. Now, those are again limited. It's mandated by the government, so they just release. But then, of course, most of these vendors then charge extra if you need something more for them to release a proprietary APIs or a FHIR, which is another topic, and we'll discuss more about that in Q&A. Financial data. So this is also excellent. So now see, problem with FHIR is you might not get all the financial data that you're looking for because FHIR is built around largely for extraction of data or exchange of data between administrative and clinical data points. There is a claims related resources available, but still it's evolving, and there are other aspects of revenue cycle that you might not be able to extract using the FHIR or HL7 route. So, but with underlying database access, it's excellent because you get deep access to general ledger, billing, insurance table, EOBs, eligibilities, claims data, payments information, anything that you want to get hold of and do reporting on top of it. On the performance, yes, it's high, built for massive ETL pipelines, whereas for the FHIR and it's moderate, subject to API limits, paging, and for every vendor it's different. So again, there is a learning curve for the team and for the organization. It's not very conducive. It's not like one one cookie cutter solution that you can implement, especially for an organization which is on multiple platforms. Like, let's say a couple of their hospitals uses Epic, or a couple of their hospitals uses um, Cerner or TrackCare. Uh, and then again, in the back office, you might have SAPs and Oracle EBS, Oracle Fusion, and Microsoft D365 and Salesforce, all these multiple applications. And then, of course, the format, which is relational. So raw table, schema, structured row, everybody understands it. It's pretty straightforward. So here, the most important thing is you can derive the data and provide the data in a format that is required for the project. So the amount of normalization, the customization that you can do is pretty huge. Whereas uh, on the FHIR or the API side, it's largely hierarchical. That means you will get a delimited JSON file, then you have to parse that and then normalize that. So that's an extra step that is involved in order to get the format right for the data that is coming from APIs. And then you have the setup effort, which is high and required. Let's see, someone joined. Hello, Matthew.
Hi. Hi,
Hi, Matthew.
Matthew.
How are you doing?
Good. Sorry for joining the
Uh,
late.
oh, no worries, no worries. We just got started a few minutes
Oh,
back,
very
but it's
nice.
absolutely
Very
fine.
nice.
So if you have any question, feel free to ask us in between, or
Sure,
we have
Mithu.
a dedicated Q&A session at the end.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And what I was talking about earlier was also on the setup effort. So when it comes to direct database extraction, the effort required to set up the infrastructure is high, because you also require deep domain understanding of each of these applications on how they have been um, set up in each of these organizations, whether they are cloud hosted or whether they are on-prem. But it's a one-time effort and it pays long dividends down the road. But when it comes to APIs and FHIR and HL7 set, it's moderate compared to the setup that is required for the direct extraction database, because it's kind of standardized and every vendor has their own way of sharing of information and connecting with their system. So it's pretty straightforward that way. And then, of course, compliance. So that's where the data governance comes into picture, and every organization there have their own security policies, has their own ways of handling and managing the access for these systems and applications. Sometimes it's vendor hosted, so you have to work alongside with the vendor that is hosting these platforms. Sometimes it's in-house, so you have to work closely with the infrastructure and the DevOps team. um, Whereas with APIs, again, there is a small amount of involvement that is required from the vendors, be it Cerner, Epic, Oracle, EBS, uh, Microsoft D365, Salesforce, who that we work with. So that's basically on the comparison between the ways of extracting the data. Now, since we are talking about enterprise scale data extraction, it's very evident that there are limitations when it comes with extracting that amount of data, maybe terabytes or petabytes of data, or 10 years, 20 years worth of data through APIs or through FHIRs or through HL7s. So what's the effort that it takes? So this basically slide talks about the performance and the scalability. Would these methods scale to the level that the organization need in order to get that volume of data? So let's say the first criteria is, if you have about 50 million resources or 50 million records that you want to extract, through a traditional FHIR bulk export or through an API that's provided by any of these vendors, it's anywhere from weeks to months, because you'll have to take care of the pagination, the throttling, the rate limit. That's all put up in place, and it all differs from vendor to vendor. But whereas with direct database, it's pretty straightforward, because once your initial setup is done, then the ETL pipeline, in order to extract that to get that amount of data, it's pretty straightforward, because that's what a lot of these organizations prefer, is to get that data as soon as possible so that they can start normalizing that data. So getting that data quickly is the key. rather than relying for weeks and months. Um, so typically, on an average, what we see is most of the organization has about 20 terabytes of data sets in any of these applications if they have been using it on an average for 6 to 8 years in an organization. So 50 million resource was one criteria. The second criteria is, let's say, if I have to extract all that 20 billion or 20 terabyte of data set, it's extremely slow. It's extremely slow from our experience when we are trying to do that through bulk FHIR resource versus direct database. The other aspect is the financial history. Now, again, getting the full financial history is limited because the business objects that has been exposed by these vendors are also limited when it comes to financial history. They might only expose eligibilities or certain claim related information, but they might not provide you all the context related to the payments, to the self pays, to the co-pays. So that way you are limited to the APIs that are available or the FHIR resources that are exposed by these vendors. Uh, Whereas with direct database, it's complete. Like you can drill down and get a very granular amount of data, especially when you're working on financial use cases, either on the analytics side or on the AI side. And then custom reports, yes, again, if the need is for more custom reports, more departmental needs, getting that data out through FHIR APIs, again, that is limited because, again, it depends on what data elements and what columns that you're trying to report out of, whether those are being exposed or those business objects are available by these vendors. So you are basically at the mercy of these vendors on what they can expose and what access that they can give you. Of course, you can always use the proprietary reporting tools that these vendors provide, be it Cerner, Epic, Oracle, Salesforce. Um, but again, here we are talking, the context is enterprise scale data, which is, let's say you are trying to get hold of last 10 years of data. Then some of those proprietary tools might not work because they have their own limitation because they are running on a production database. So they can look back to a certain point in time. And then data validation, of course, I mean, since we are getting a hierarchical JSON file from these API methods, obviously it has to be validated and it is a standard. So obviously the chances of you validating against that data is also less because you rely on that JSON structure. Whereas with direct database, you have a lot more flexibility where you can do lot many types of validation, not just the validation on the record count, but on the quality of the data, whether the missing rows or missing values, whether certain things which is required or mandated is not captured. So there are a lot of flexibility when it comes to that ETL pipeline validation that you can perform, and then you can arrive at a conclusion, which can sometimes directly provide inputs to the workflow team, because then sometimes they can go and change and edit and modify their workflows to capture that set of information. Uh, and then as far as the cost is concerned, I would say direct database is a lower cost overall because the effort that is required in order to set up that infrastructure is less, and the amount of time that is required to get that data and normalize data is also less compared uh, to the infrastructure that is required to connect and exchange the data or get that data through APIs and FHIR and HL7s. Because you'll need to have a dedicated servers, you have to run some integration engines. If it is Rhapsody or if it is Mirth Connect, it all comes with an additional organization cost for the subscription, as well as the compute. Because once you get the JSON, you'll have to parse that, push it into the database, normalize that, which is an additional extra step. And of course, you need to have more advanced or more skilled team members within the organization in order to handle that kind of complexity of the data that is coming through these mechanisms. So what are we suggesting? Are we suggesting that you always pick database extraction? No, so that's not the point. The point is organization can pick and choose anything, or they can pick both depending on the use case that they're trying to solve. So it's not API versus database. But these are some of the scenarios that we have listed out, which we think organizations could consider which method to go for. So if you are building a smart on FHIR application, we would definitely recommend both the API route or the FHIR route or the HL7 route. If you're doing HI integration now, most of the HI integration in the region, not just in North America, but also in GCC, for example, in Dubai with Nabid, with Malafi, and they all mandate HL7B2 to some extent. And then slowly, for some data elements, they are also open for sharing the data with uh, in a FHIR format as well. The other job is daily sync. If you have an application or a mobile app, or if you have some central data repository for reporting purposes, which is pretty limited in order with patient or administrative data or appointment related data or some medication or some clinical data. So for those daily sync jobs, API is a preferred method because anytime there is a change or activity or a trigger that takes place, API can capture that and asynchronously can sync that repository. Same thing, patient portal. If your organization has a patient portal and it reflects the most recent changes of the patient record, both from the administrative as well as from the clinical standpoint, API is a preferred method, HL7B2 tackle very specifically. Whereas if you have to see at the bottom, all these use cases, historical migration. So now depends on the volume of data and the period of data that you're trying. So in those scenarios, we always prefer direct database extraction, data archival, enterprise analytics, AI, data lake. If you're building lake house on say Databricks, Snowflake, Microsoft Fabric, database extraction is the way forward. Financial reconciliation, if that's your um, goal, and if you're building financial solutions and products, litigations and legal hold, if you have applications or if you are releasing that information to the courts or to the legal authorities, database extraction is the most preferred because you can get the complete accurate information. In that sense, when you're trying to share it with the legal authorities of that nation. Complete EMR replacement. So that is a scenario where, let's say, your organization has been using a product for last 10 years and you're trying to move away as part of your digital transformation or part of your migration into a newer platform, cloud-based platform. It could be a hybrid approach where you sometimes sync the patient records through the APIs for a period of time when the new system is trying to be brought in and the old system is still being used. And then at some point you have the cutover, and then some files you can just extract for a period of time and then import it through the normal database extraction. So there are multiple strategies that organizations adopt. So this is from our experience, what we think are the probable use cases for using different methodology. So at the conclusion, again, I would not pick and choose here. It's not API versus database or HL7 versus. So as I said, like interoperability is great. It's used for a specific purpose, and it's meant for exchange of data with third-party systems, with other applications, with agencies. But it is limited to what you could exchange. So if your goal is enterprise data extraction, we always prefer that you have the complete access and the flexibility of getting all types of data for the period of time that you're looking for. And also you get the CDC, the change data capture over a period of time quicker and faster. And so that all these programs could be executed within the time frame and within the budget. So, so it's up to the organization and it's up to what you are going to pursue in order for the programs, the digital programs that you have undertaken at your hospitals or at your healthcare organizations. So I think with that, we have concluded today's session. If there's any question, I think I'm open to answer some of them. And if I don't have the answers, I'll come back and maybe um, do some research and get that answer back to you. So if there's any questions, feel free please to ask.
Hi, Mithun. Hi. Sorry, I missed your whole session. Sorry for that. If you can share me your recorded video, it will be great. Great help for us. So we can look into this. What is this? So, but what is this overall the solution? Is it like a solution, or what is it? This is what so far has been discussed.
Got it, got it. No, so Matthew, I mean, I will share the recording and I'll also share this
Sure.
slide deck that I have here that I'm showing. So basically, this is a part of our effort to educate
Mm-hmm.
some of the stakeholders in the healthcare organization
Mm-hmm.
on data extraction, because now a lot of healthcare organizations are undertaking different initiatives like analytics, creating data warehouse, creating lake house, getting data from multiple applications into one single repository, AI use cases. So for all that, you need underlying data. So always people come and say that, hey, Mithun, you know what? I have the APIs, I have the FHIR, HL7s. Can we just not get data for last 10 years and put it into my data warehouse? So obviously we run into some issues when we do that kind of approach. So that's where we wanted to highlight, like there are scenarios where you can rely on HL7, V2, and FHIR messaging and APIs for exchange of data. But when you're talking about enterprise data, which is uh, data across all the departments, data from multiple applications, data worth of 20 terabytes, 50 terabytes, data for last 10 years, 20 years. So sometimes then in those scenarios, uh, API methods or FHIR methods or HL7 method will not be conducive, and it's also very expensive and it's not recommended. So in those scenarios, we always go with direct database extraction. For obviously for which you need to have, because it's complex. Getting direct database is also complex because each system has their own schemas, their own complexities. Some of these are huge applications. They have 10,000, 50,000 tables, relationships, referential integrity. So all that needs to be considered. And if somebody who doesn't know all these can also take years and months worth of effort to build that kind of data platform for the organization. So that's kind of the goal of this presentation.
Okay, understood. I got the overview of it. Thanks for that. It will
Mhm.
be pretty much helpful to have the understand of how to extract the data. Please do share the recording, so it will be helpful for us just to go through it again.
Sure, sure. I will do that. I will do that. And I'll
Thanks a lot.
just stop recording now.
All right, all right.